You are being interviewed in regards to the crime of murder.
The walls closed in on Tommy Swint, not for the disappearance of Niqui McCown, but for the murder of another woman years earlier.
Was he an evil man for killing people? Yes. But did he portray himself as an evil man? No.
His haunted past led to new questions and suspicions in the case of the missing bride-to-be.
Do you think he was a serial killer then, or do you think he at least had the psychological makings to be?
I definitely believe he has psychological makings.
As one family started to get answers, Niqi's hung on to a thread of hope.
Finally, someone has spoke up, and my family really, really does appreciate it. But if you do know something for sure, if you know that Tommy really harmed my sister, will you please call?
And just when justice seemed imminent, the case took its most dramatic turn yet.
As the investigators were pulling up into the area, they heard what sounded like a gunshot.
I'm Elyse Coulter.
I'm Nathan Edwards.
And I'm Becky Gulden, and this is Missing Niqui McCown.
The key to possibly cracking Niqui McCown's case meant solving another first. In 2008, Dayton detective Patty Tackett connected Niqi's coworker Tommy Swint to the murder of 33-year-old Tina Ivory in 1991. Tina was found beaten, strangled, and dumped in a trash pile just off a road tucked away in the woods. Her body was laying on top of a heap of tires, mattresses, and furniture. She was wrapped in a quilt, and it was bound with duct tape.
Tommy's DNA matched semen found on Tina's body, but Detective Tackett needed Tommy's fingerprints to prosecute. He moved to Phoenix City, Alabama in 2008, 7 years after Niqui went missing. So Detective Tackett drove 600 miles to his new home to get it.
I'm not Detective Tackett. I am with the Dayton Police Department.
My name is Rick May. I'm an investigator with the Montgomery County Prosecutor Coroner's Office.
Just understand, Tommy, we're trying to be fair as we can be, and we understand and we appreciate your cooperation with us.
The recorded interview was on November 16, 2009, right after he was picked up during an orchestrated traffic stop.
He knew what our job was. He knew what we can and can't do. And with all that being said, he still cooperated. He knew he did not have to come downtown.
Right.
He knew he did not have to go.
The detective sat at a table with Tommy in an empty interview room. The former corrections officer and one-time police officer now wore security guard uniform for his job at the Walmart distribution center in Auburn, Alabama. Tommy appeared calm as he answered questions about his law enforcement background. Then the conversation shifted to his past and how a man from Alabama ended up in Dayton, Ohio.
We're both on a cold case homicide task force. This particular case happened in 1991.
When did you come to Dayton?
In 91.
Investigators learned that Tommy moved to Dayton the same year Tina was murdered.
What brought you there?
I had a cousin. He said, you should come to Dayton and visit and see how you like it. And I kind of liked it because it wasn't city and it wasn't country. It was kind of in between.
When he got to town, he lived with his cousin's niece, Angela, a woman police had already talked to.
You moved in with her. Was she married?
She wasn't married. We was having an affair though. We wasn't
So there was no blood or anything.
No.
It was just a marriage by marriage type thing. Did she have any kids?
Yeah, she had 2 teenage sons at the time.
Oh, okay. So they were living with her.
Yeah.
It was one of Angela's sons who helped tie Tommy to a potential crime scene. Little did Tommy know that her son told detectives he saw the dirty white sneakers in the basement, along with the pool of blood and the trail of blood leading to Tommy's trunk. So getting him to admit to living with them back in 91 was a big deal. Detective Tackett believed Tommy was so candid because he thought the interview was about Niqui, not Tina.
He did not know what we were there for. We did make contact with him prior to him going down to Alabama and asked him if that quilt, we actually showed him Tina's picture and showed him a picture of the quilt to see if he knew this, and he denied.
They made sure to fingerprint Tommy before the interview started. Again, Detective Tackett told us he knew he wasn't under arrest, and he gave the fingerprints willingly.
There's additional evidence in this case, that being a fingerprint, not of a normal digit, but it's a second digit or possibly from a palm. That's why we took those today to have them compared as well.
They got the evidence they came for, and while they talked to Tommy, his prints were compared to what was found on the tape wrapped around Tina's body. They needed to buy time and proceeded to chip away at their prime suspect.
You are being interviewed in regards to the crime of murder. Before you ask any questions, you must understand your rights.
They read Tommy his Miranda rights and told him he had the right to get an attorney. This is standard procedure if you're detained or taken into custody for questioning. The warning must be read before any questions are asked. Once they read him his rights, they started to ask about Tina Ivory.
Does that girl look familiar to you? Never date a girl that looked like that?
Not that I did know.
When I told you her name was Tina, would that ring a bell to you?
Not at all.
What if we told you we had evidence that would tie you?
I wouldn't believe it. You talking about tie me to her? I mean, is she alive or dead?
She's dead.
Oh, I wouldn't. Well,
What if I told you we had your DNA off her? Would you believe it?
no, I wouldn't believe it.
It suddenly became clear to Tommy this wasn't about Niqui. Detectives had him exactly where they wanted him.
You killed her.
So when
That you killed her.
are you stating that I killed?
I'm asking you, did you kill her?
Uh-uh.
Okay,
I don't
if
even
I'm
know.
telling you that we have evidence that says that you did, what do you have to say to that?
Well, I have nothing to say to that. I mean, there's nothing I can say.
At this point, detectives believe they had 3 strikes against Tommy: his DNA at the crime scene, eyewitnesses accounting for the blood in the quilt, and maybe soon his fingerprints. But they still wanted the last piece of the puzzle, a confession.
The evidence that we have in the case comes back to you as our suspect. So the bottom line is you do have explaining to do. Okay, on why we have evidence that says you killed her. I think you're ready to explain it after 19 years of living with us. I think you're ready.
While the 3 of them talked, Detective Tackett got a text. In video from the interview, you can see she picked up her phone and showed it to her partner. The evidence was in.
We sent those fingerprints to our crime lab, like via while we were still sitting there, and we knew that it was a hit.
A match to Tommy on the unique fingerprint found on the inside sticky portion of the duct tape wrapped around Tina Ivory's body. That's when the conversation took a dramatic turn.
And all due respect, and I understand what's your job, but I'm going to have to bring this to a close.
So you're telling me after 18, 19 years you don't want to talk about this to us?
Well, you say this. I don't know what this is.
This murder.
Well,
This murder of her.
okay.
As soon as I said, you did it, pretty much, he wanted the interview to stop and asked for an attorney. Again, as calmly as could be, as respectful as could be, but very apparent of why. It wasn't like, man, I don't know what's going on. It was like, oh shit, I think I'm screwed.
Detectives knew they had Tommy for the 1991 murder of Tina Ivory, but they couldn't arrest him. They had to let him go home until a grand jury could indict him back in Dayton. Little did they know that was the last time they'd see him.
On February 3rd, 2010, Dayton police finally got the green light to arrest Tommy Swint for Tina Ivory's murder. But as officers surrounded his Alabama home, the unthinkable happened.
As the investigators were pulling up into the area near where this gentleman lives, they heard what sounded like a gunshot. Tommy Swint, 43 years of age, who is the suspect in Ohio, dead from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
A gut punch for Detective Patty Tackett.
When you got the call from the Alabama authorities that he shot and killed himself, what was your reaction at that point?
Very disappointed. Very disappointed. When you work a case for years and you work with the family, and I did work with Niqui McCown's family, you want to put those handcuffs on him, knowing that that wasn't going to happen, and knowing that we have a family who is still missing their loved one. It's that's a struggle. That's a struggle.
It was more than a struggle for Niqi's family. It was heartbreak. While some family members suspected Bobby at first, in the months after her disappearance, they thought Tommy did it, and they viewed his suicide as the end of the road to finding Niqui. In their minds, police had nothing else to go on, no one else to question, no way to get justice.
When you heard that Tommy was indicted, on this murder of Tina Ivory and then heard that he committed suicide.
When I seen that on TV that he was being indicted, that gave me hope. Now we'll find Niqui. But then 30 minutes later, and I remember calling my mom. She said, now we'll never find my baby.
At this point, Michelle's sister Tammy broke down.
I'm happy that they've solved her murder, but I just want to know where my sister is. I'm sorry.
For Niqi's daughter Peyton, who was in high school at the time, the news hit her like a ton of bricks. Niqi's sisters pulled her out of school and told her Tommy was now dead.
I just remember being so frustrated because it was like, man, I thought that we were going to have something. I remember there were talks of him being indicted on Tina's case and things like that. So I was like, maybe they've got him, so now we could get him. It was very gut-wrenching, and it was kind of like, we're back to square one. What do we do from here? Because at that time, that's what we believed was the only person that could have possibly known something.
You may be wondering about Tommy's wife, Lisa. They were married at the time Niqui disappeared and were still married at the time of his death.
I think she was very blindsided. She was an innocent. She was a girl who was standing by her man on the Niqui McCown thing and would have never suspected that her husband was a murderer.
As the news of Tommy's death set in, Niqi's family, investigators, and the community struggled with the reality that the only person who may know where Niqui is took that knowledge to his grave.
Why did he kill himself?
I'm going to go to prison. Most people don't want to be caught. You've also got a man who has lived a life of upstanding citizen. And they lived in this society, in this community as an upstanding citizen. They're married to somebody who's an upstanding citizen. Was he an evil man for killing people? Yes. But did he portray himself as an evil man? No. Anybody that would know would say he was a good guy.
We asked Detective Tackett about Tommy's cooperation and why she thought he willingly cooperated. He gave his DNA and his fingerprints to investigators, which ultimately led to his indictment for the murder of Tina Ivory.
Why do you think he did?
Because, why not cooperate? He gave his DNA to Richmond. I didn't do this. Some people truly convince themselves of, I didn't do this. Some people just feel like, yeah, I killed somebody. Just the reactions of people over the years of a lot of these interviews is amazing to me on how different they all are. Some are adamant, some are cooperative, some are not. It's just all over the board. There is no consistency in that.
Do you know what the motive was for why you believe he killed Tina Ivory?
No. We could make assumptions, but that's what they would be, is assumptions.
Do you think he was a serial killer then, or do you think he at least had the psychological makings to be?
I definitely believe he has psychological makings of it, especially with the things that we found out about some other things that he did, his personality, the closet type things, the things that you don't see overtly, but you find out because of past relationships that he had with other women. Then you start seeing, yes, on the outside, he was charming on the outside. He was a handsome man. He was very well put together. Behind the scenes was not what you saw on the outside.
We'll be right back. Behind a charming facade was a man many considered evil. Some suspected Tommy Swint was a serial killer. DNA never linked him to Niqi's disappearance, but police believe he could have killed her and possibly others.
Did his DNA, after you put it into the system, get pinged on any other cases?
I'm not aware of any other cases. I'm not always notified and I'm not aware. I can't say no, but there may be.
Okay.
Do you suspect he had other victims?
I do.
For Richmond detectives, Tommy's indictment changed the way they investigated Niqi's disappearance and the way they viewed Tommy Swint as a suspect.
Obviously, it's going to make him more appealing. You already know he's capable. He's done it before. It was prior to Niqui. It makes anybody look at him a little bit harder.
How did him killing himself change the way you guys approach this?
It's completely complicated. I can't talk to him anymore. So we're stuck with friends, family, acquaintances, anybody he may have told something to get any kind of answers. The technologies aren't there like they are today. If we had his phone, we could pinpoint exactly where he was at what time.
After Tommy's suicide, Dayton cold case detectives got a search warrant for Tommy's belongings. Police in Alabama collected anything that could help solve Niqui's case. They took notes and a computer. After they got it back to Dayton, digital forensic technicians searched the computer for any detail, no matter how insignificant. One thing that stood out, he kept track of news stories back in Dayton to see if any bodies were found.
One of the things that stood out most to us is any time that there was a body found in this area, he looked into it. On the computer, you could actually see what they searched. And that is one of the things that he searched. If there was bodies located throughout this area, he would click on that.
Do you think it was because he thought maybe they had found Niqui or someone else? Yep. Detective Tackett said you can draw your own conclusions about Tommy's search history, but they never found anything on the computer directly linking him to Niqui or her disappearance.
You may be wondering where the case stands today. Richmond is now finally getting a crack at Tommy's computer. Last year, Richmond detectives got it and are now having technicians from the Indiana State Lab comb through it. They hope to find something that may have been missed in the past. Detective Wright is also using what's called computer voice stress analysis, or CVSA, on the recorded interviews with Tommy.
When you tell a liar, your stress level goes up, that fight or flight kicks in. An answer with no stress is going to look completely different than a stressful answer because of those frequencies changing in someone's voice. And that's why I'm able to take, a recording from 20 years ago and play that, because the frequencies stay the same.
Detective Wright also wants to do more physical searches of properties in Indiana and Ohio. He told us he has several areas in mind. While a lot of the attention is still focused on Tommy, Detective Wright has not officially ruled out Bobby Webster, Niqui's fiancée. And to complicate matters, Bobby also died several years ago from a heart condition, according to Niqui's family.
Police are still holding out hope that this case will be solved, but they need something new to work with. And Detective Tackett hopes somebody will come forward with a tip that could crack the case.
You aren't going to do anything more to that family. Tommy Swint's name is tainted. You're not going to taint it anymore. People need to understand that. This was not just a guy that we suspected. This was a guy that clearly 100%, without a doubt, killed a woman and threw her body and disposed of it like trash. That's not a good person. That's not a good person.
Niqui's sisters, Tammy and Michelle, keep sharing their sister's story to keep her memory alive.
She's totally missed. Totally. And I would like to know where she's at, if nothing else, because we've already lost our dad. We done lost our mom. And I want Peyton to be able to find some closure. I mean, I want the closure too, but she was 9 years old and she never got to have that.
There's somebody out there that's going to watch this that may have one of those human moments and say, okay, it's time I say what I know. And I'm hoping for that. I'm praying for that.
Detective Wright says the family's dedication to this case is what's keeping it from going cold.
Clearly, Niqui's family is motivated by love for their sister, for their mother. What continues to motivate you?
Most of it is pain in the relationship that we've kind of developed, knowing that she's still got that hope. She's still depending on somebody. I think it'd be hard to just walk away from that and to call it cold and let it sit somewhere. So while there's still doors to beat down, I think we keep doing it.
Niqui's daughter Peyton survived her tainted childhood thanks to the love of others. And now she's doing her best to preserve the innocence of her own daughter.
How do you handle it then when your daughter starts asking about grandma? I do my very best to just be as, I don't want to say honest, because obviously I try to shield her as much as possible. So I explained to her, Grandma Niqui was taken from us. The police are working really hard to bring Grandma Niqui back. And when we find her, we'll all be very happy.
What kind of grandma do you think she would have been?
Oh, gosh. One of the probably the best. Nicolette would probably literally have any and everything that she wanted. I think she would be a really hands-on grandma. I think that I probably would never have my kid, to be honest with you. She would probably have her all the time.
You made the ultimate tribute to your mom. You named your daughter after your mom.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you come up with that?
Nicolette was just something that my aunt called my mom, and I just knew that that was something that I would eventually would like to tribute to my mother. And from what I hear, Nicolette is similar to my mom in her spunkiness and things like that as a child. So it's good to know that the name holds weight.
Niqui's spirit lives on as her family clings to the possibility that this missing bride-to-be will return home and this mystery will be solved.
We know you probably have a lot of theories. Well, as journalists who have been digging into this story for years, we'd like to briefly share ours. Elyse?
So my first theory is I believe Niqui is unfortunately dead at this point. I just don't believe that she would take off in any way, shape, or form and leave her daughter behind. Peyton really felt strongly about that, and I truly believe that Peyton would know her mom best, and I really believe that she would not do so. I do believe that Tommy is involved in Niqui's disappearance in some way, shape, or form. I just feel as if a lot of the stories we heard from the family, the fact that he was indicted on a previous murder 10 years earlier, it just seems to me that he would be the most plausible suspect in her disappearance.
Becky, what's your theory?
Yeah, I agree with Elyse on the first point that I don't believe Niqui ran off. Maybe if she had been found right away, but the fact that she's been gone for over 20 years, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think she would have left her daughter either. I definitely think there's a lot of questions surrounding Tommy, but I also have a lot of questions surrounding Bobby and his story. First and foremost, he failed a polygraph test. Second, I don't believe his story about why he traded cars with Niqui. Why would he give her a less reliable car to travel to Dayton? It doesn't add up to me.
The sad reality here is that the people police believe know the most about Niqui's case are either dead or getting older. Time is ticking and the urgency to get answers has never been more intense, and while new technology does give investigators some hope, it's not always the most reliable. Now, the key will be an eyewitness coming forward, and there's always that hope to give that family some closure. It doesn't hurt to be brave, it doesn't hurt to come forward to talk to police, and you could be the reason the family gets some peace. That's all for this season of Missing Niqui McCown, a podcast from Dayton 24/7 Now. If we get any new updates, we'll make sure to update you here. And make sure you hit subscribe and also follow us at Dayton247now.com.
Find us in your podcast app and follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.
If you like the show, leave us a rating or review. It really helps new listeners find the show. Missing Niqui McCown has been a presentation of Dayton 24/7 Now, an affiliate of Sinclair Broadcast Group. Lee Furry is our producer. Brian Petrus is our associate producer. Editing and audio engineering by Eric Newell, with additional editing by Adam Braunstein. Mitch Hansen is our senior podcast producer. Jordan Rosari, a producer. Production coordination by Anna Nicole Wages, and legal support from Chase Bales. Rich Cook is the head of audio at Sinclair.
This is still an active investigation. If you have any tips about the case, please contact Richmond Police at 765-983-7247. For more reporting from Dayton, head to Dayton247now.com. We've created a special section dedicated to this podcast.
Until next time, I'm Nathan Edwards.
I'm Elyse Coulter.
And I'm Becky Gulden. This has been Missing Niqui McCown.